Resuming debate, the honourable member for Renfrew-Nipissing-Pembroke.
And Mr. Speaker, I'll be sharing my time with the member from Calgary Rocky Ridge. As Member of Parliament for Renfrew-Nipissing-Pembroke and on behalf of the hard-working people of the Upper Ottawa Valley, I participate in today's debate regarding the lack of transparency in this government. And I congratulate my Eastern Ontario colleague, the Honourable Member for Carleton, for the excellent job he's doing as Shadow Finance Minister for our Conservative government in waiting. The Honourable Member for Carleton is responsible for today's motion that Parliament is now debating. And what today's debate is about is a familiar refrain in Ottawa since the last election. There is a lack of transparency, or some would call it a hidden agenda, between what this government says and what it does, and who benefits. Is this example before Canadians today simply one politician gaming the system to his benefit, or are Canadians looking at systematic, corrupt behaviour on a scale the multi-billion-dollar Ontario electricity scandal holds on? It's non-disclosure of all his vast corporate wealth by the member of Toronto Centre, hiding the need for impartiality in decision-making that would be necessary had full disclosure taken place. The allegation has been made that the changes put forth by the member for Toronto Centre, apart from unfairly attacking small businesses or individuals who are incorporated, will enrich the personal wealth of the finance minister. The need for higher taxes in these changes being pushed through Parliament without proper public consultation have been brought about by the decision to run huge budget deficits. Now, when I'm asked the question, Mr. Speaker, why the government is in such a huge deficit, I respond very bluntly: bad spending. So the question then becomes, what kind of bad spending is it that's resulting in such high deficits? I use the example of bad spending by the federal government on what the finance minister, the member for Toronto Centre, spent on a slick cover for his deficit budget booklet. The cover is used one day. Duplicate this example of bad spending across government, and then one can start to understand why the finances of Canada are in such a mess. In 2017, just the slick cover on the deficit budget cost taxpayers $212,000. That makes $175,000 from the Liberal member of Toronto that he spent on a slick cover for his budget in 2016. Seemed like a bargain. Now to the member from Toronto Centre who has a private European villa and has, to quote a national magazine, a tax-dodging shell company set up to manage it, something he neglected to disclose to the Ethics Commissioner. $212,000 must seem like chump change. What's all the fuss, the Finance Minister asks? Simply put, the fuss is that the Finance Minister has promised Canadians that he would abstain from decisions and discussions that relate to Morneau Chappelle. Instead, he's actively bragged that not only did I abstain, but I actively engaged in the discussions and promotion of the policy that experts say benefits his family-owned company. Beyond that, the member from Toronto Centre failed to disclose a private corporation to the Ethics Commissioner. Now, most Canadians would never forget if they owned a villa in France. To top it all off, the member for Toronto Centre admitted he did not place more than $30 million in Morneau Chappelle shares into a blind trust. Few Canadians had the benefit of a trust fund from Daddy growing up, or they attended private schools, or had a fat income waiting in the family business when they were done school. The family business in this case is showing other one-percenters how to avoid their fair share of tax. In 2016, the median income for females in my riding was just over $25,000 per year. In fact, the bulk of all wage earners in my riding earn between $20,000 and $29,000 per year. So for just the price of the slick cover on the 2017 deficit budget document, it would have paid the incomes of 8 average working females in Renfrew-Nipissing-Pembroke, and those same individuals fall below the low-income cutoff that normally qualifies a person for the supplement. How ironic that one of the pieces of advice the member for Toronto Centre dispensed to his wealthy clients was how to game the system to collect the guaranteed income supplement. The guaranteed income supplement is intended for seniors who have no other source of income except the universal old age pension. The supplement is means tested. It's not intended for one percenters who hide their money to avoid paying their fair share tax. To further put the amount spent by the member of Toronto Centre on a cover for a booklet in perspective, the Conservative government of Prime Minister Stephen Harper spent $600 for a stock photo on the cover of the 2015 balanced budget that we presented to Canadians that year. Yes, $600, and the federal budget was balanced. There's no respect for today's tax dollar in Ottawa today. The tax changes to small businesses that have been presented by the member from Toronto Centre are a double-edged sword. On the one hand, the Liberal tax changes unfairly tax doctors, farmers, small businesses, and a host of other hardworking Canadians, while on the other hand, not touching the personal fortunes of the member of Toronto Centre or the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister benefited as a trust fund kid, as did his father before him. So to be clear, the motion we have before us today requests the member for Toronto Centre table all documents he submitted to the Conflict of Interest and Ethics Commissioner between November 4th, 2015 and July 18th, 2017. Canadians have a right to know if decisions are being made by the member for Toronto Centre, whether or not there'll be a personal benefit to his family fortune and to the fortunes of other Liberal Party members. The test will be if Liberal Party members vote in favour of today's motion. If the member for Toronto Centre has nothing to hide, the vote should be unanimous in favour of full disclosure. If, on the other hand, Liberal members speak against this motion, or worse, do not support it, Canadians can rightly ask, what is the member for Toronto Centre hiding? By not providing full disclosure to Canadians, every financial decision made by this minister must be called into question. The attack by this government on small business, doctors, and others asks that question. Who benefits? Big business, of course. The big business types that attend pay-to-play fundraisers hosted in places like downtown Toronto. Big business and big government are mirror images of one another. Big business, like this government, overwhelmingly leans left. Economists refer to the practice of handouts to big business as welfare capitalism. And that's how much of big business gets rich and how most of it stays rich. Liberal favored big fundraisers make their fortunes exclusively through direct government subsidies and government mandates. In Ontario, industrial wind turbines are the result of successful lobbying by the type of big business conglomerates favored by the Liberal Party. Without government intervention, industrial wind turbines would represent a trivial part of the economy and would not be the multi-million-dollar drain on the pockets of electricity customers who are forced into energy poverty by that bad spending. Unnecessary government intervention causes bad spending that starts with blowing over $200,000 on a cover that ends up with billions spent on social experiments that only hurt ordinary working Canadians. Canadians have already been exposed to the 5 principles of the Liberal Party tax policy. 1, they attack small business. Just ask the families who run campgrounds how effective that attack has been. 2, they continue to raise taxes on small business while publicly stating the opposite. 3, they continue to burden job creators with unnecessary regulations and red tape to stifle creativity. 4, to continue to bring in tax changes that make it harder and harder for the family farm to survive and continue on as a family farm to the next generation. And 5, ensure changes to the tax system continue to favor big business at the expense of entrepreneurs, particularly female entrepreneurs whose success in small business is breaking the glass ceiling. It's taken too long for Canadians to see just how out of touch the Liberal Party is to the needs of and aspirations of ordinary Canadians. The member from Toronto Centre needs to get out of his Toronto glass bubble and actually listen to people who are not the 1%ers he likes to only associate with. The time has come for this government to listen to those Canadians who respect the law, work hard, and play by the rules.
Questions and comments?